This is WQIR 514, Atlanta 947, Julie, in case you didn't remember, with this week's new user tips and operating procedures segment. This week on the new user tips and operating procedures, we will talk about repeaters and how they work. It seems to be a mystery to many and yet magic to most. But honestly, it's not that complicated, so let's break it down. Unlike your radio, a repeater is capable of receiving and transmitting at the same time. The repeater listens for traffic that includes a special tone, which tells the repeater to activate. We'll talk more about that later. The repeater then immediately retransmits that traffic on a different frequency. That different frequency is determined by the frequency offset, which is defined in the FCC GMRS rules. For example, our flagship repeater listens on 467.675 megahertz, and it listens for a DCS tone of D114N. Whenever it hears a signal on that frequency that includes that tone, it retransmits that signal on 462.675 megahertz, which is the FCC prescribed offset of 5 megahertz. So how do our radios connect? We need to program our radios as indicated on the chart available at nggmrs.org. Go to our webpage and scroll down to helpful links. Click on the one on the right that shows a radio tower. There, you can find a chart with all of our repeater frequencies. Once programmed, your radio will transmit the correct tones to activate the repeater. For instance, at flagship, your radio will transmit on 467.675 and will include the D114N tone. When flagship hears that signal, it will retransmit your signal. Also, flagship will send your signal over the linking network and activate all other linked repeaters on the network. Accessing any one repeater on the network puts your signal on all linked repeaters on the network. A note about tones. A common question is, what are CTCSS or DCS tones or codes? Let's talk with CTCSS, which stands for Continuous Tone Coded Squelch System. In this system, your radio transmits a continuous sub-audible tone whenever you have the PTT engaged. This tone is sub-audible. Therefore, we don't hear it. Our radio filters out the tone before playing the audio, but the repeater does hear the tone, and if the tone matches the CTCSS tone the repeater expects, it will transmit your traffic. DCS tones work the same way. DCS, or Digital Code Squelch, also sometimes called CDCSS, is another set of codes for opening the squelch. DCS can be useful when the CTCSS tones are inadequate to close the repeater to unwanted traffic. Finally, a reminder. And we'll break. One moment. So, as I was saying, our reminder. In a linked repeater network, it is important to slow things down. It's natural to press the PTT and begin talking, but in a linked network, that can sound as though you began talking before you pressed the button. You see, it takes a moment for the links to build paths and to open connection to all of the linked repeaters. So try to get in the habit of pressing the PTT and pausing before speaking. Also, try to leave a little space between traffic you respond to. There may be others with urgent traffic that need to interrupt. Or someone just wants to join the conversation. So slow things down a bit and endeavor to be more inclusive in conversations on the network. I hope I've answered some questions about how repeaters work, but if you have other questions, our Facebook page is a great place to ask. You can also ask questions during the open floor portion of the North Georgia GMRS Regional Net. These are just a few new user tips and operating procedures. I hope you'll tune in next week for my next episode of Julie's Tips and Operating Procedures. And again, if you have any questions or suggestions for new user tips and operating procedures, send me a note at julie@nggmrs.org. We are North Georgia GMRS Network, and this is WQIR 514, Atlanta 947, Julie. And I'm clear. Good night, everyone.